happens. So you'll have the approval, then you'll have some selling off of the price. I think, it's always this, buy the rumor, sell the news. Once you have the news, you'll see some people do some profit taking.
That I actually think the ETF approval that's going to come for spot is actually not a good thing for Coinbase.
Happy New Year, everybody. We are greeted with a pretty big red day today. See, like Apple is down 3.5%. That's a pretty big drop for Apple. I believe they got downgraded to like a sell or something like that. But I did sell some puts on Apple today. Google down as well. All the big techs down. I sold a few puts on Google. Another one I bought today was PayPal down here. They were only up a little bit, so they weren't not down very much today. I did buy a little bit of PayPal, and also I did a little buy of Coinbase. So for PayPal, I did a buy because I wanted to round out my shares to 100, so I can start selling some covered calls on these. Current balance is about $6,000, so not a big position, but I did get to 100 shares, so I can start doing some covered calls. And Coinbase, just a tiny position for me, about $3,000. But this is not financial advice, it's purely what I'm doing. I'm just taking little nibbles into Coinbase as it does these little dips. So let's look at some of these options that I added recently. So a lot of the options that I have are going to be expiring worthless, all these ones here. And I did sell some puts on Apple. I did sell a put on Google, put on Palantir, and sold a put on the QQQs. Google, I think, might have a good 2024 because it's an election year and there's going to be a lot of ads. And also the spot Bitcoin ETF is coming out very soon, maybe this week, maybe next week. But when it does come out, there's about 12 applications and they're all going to be heavily advertising, and Google just allowed that for them to advertise. So I think we'll be seeing a lot of advertisements and a lot of advertising dollars flowing into Google. So I'm trying to pick up some Google this year. Now let's take a look at Coinbase. It did a big drop to 156. I did a small buy at like maybe 169. And if it does hit the 140 mark, I will be doing a big buy. I think I will just let my put get assigned so I can buy 100 shares of that at that 140 mark if it goes down to there. Now it could go down lower. This is not financial advice. This is purely what I'm doing. But it could go down lower. We'll see what happens. A lot of this depends on the spot ETF, what the fees they're charging, and also how many people are going to stick with Coinbase to trade the altcoins that are not offered, such as the Solanas and the Boinks and all these other altcoins, meme coins that are not offered anywhere else, like XRP, Ripple. Like you can only do that on Coinbase if you're, in the US.
Yes, but Coinbase is getting crushed today. And the kicker here is, I talked about this last week, that I actually think the ETF approval that's going to come for spot is actually not a good thing for Coinbase because it gives people an alternative. So you could buy the spot ETF, which tracks the spot price in an FDIC insured account at pennies on the dollar to what Coinbase charges in fees for you and I to go buy Bitcoin. And so it's going to drive the fees down that Coinbase can charge. Now, a lot of people are saying, oh, but they're going to be the custodian for BlackRock. They're not paying BlackRock the same fees that you and I are paying. Trust me on that, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And so again, huge drop here, just from literally $190 back to 156 or so. It was overbought too. Again, just looking at this and using common sense, massive move up. You got to expect some sort of pullback. Always drives me nuts when people think things can just go to the moon without any sort of pullback whatsoever.
He's saying that the spot Bitcoin ETF is going to hurt Coinbase business. We'll have to see about that. It might hurt it. I still think it depends on the fees that the ETFs are charging and if there's going to be a lot of demand for those altcoins. But he could be right. It could hurt Coinbase right now. But I still think the Q4, like the quarter that we're just coming out of right now, the ETF hasn't launched yet. So Coinbase has seen a tremendous surge in volume on Bitcoin and all the other altcoins. So I think Q4 might be a good year or a good quarter for Coinbase. And let's take a look at some of the ETF fees that are coming out. So we're getting news that Fidelity and Galaxy have announced some of the fees for their spot Bitcoin ETFs. Fidelity is going to charge 0.39%, and Galaxy is going to waive fees for 6 months and then charge a 0.6% or 0.59%, 0.6%. Now 0.6 is pretty big. I would think a 0.6 is pretty big. 0.39 is a more manageable number. I don't think BlackRock has published anything about this. So a question remains, are people going to be satisfied with these fees and just buy the spot Bitcoin ETF, or are they going to stick with a Coinbase? And I mean, Coinbase has a lot of fees as well. So are they just going to deal with the one-time fee of a Coinbase versus a recurring fee of a 0.39 for these ETFs? I'm not sure. I'm not sure what people will do. Now, I saw this video from Marathon Digital CEO. Marathon Digital is a Bitcoin mining company. I thought he had some pretty good insights of what might happen when the spot Bitcoin ETF does get approved. Let's take a look at what he says in this video.
Yeah, great question. So there are basically three scenarios. One is the SEC approves Grayscale's conversion and the ETF applications. That's what the market has priced in. And so you have these catalysts for 2024, which are these ETFs being approved. You have the halving cycle, where people believe that Bitcoin is going to follow a pattern that has nothing to do with economic cycles. My contrarian view there is it's global liquidity that drives Bitcoin more so than halving cycles. And if you mirror the halving cycles over global liquidity patterns, you will see they match perfectly historically over prior patterns. And Satoshi was quite focused on that when he actually wrote the white paper, because it was in response to the global financial crisis. Other scenario for 2024 is that the ETFs are approved, but the Grayscale conversion is not approved. Then you'll see a dampening, most probably, in the elation of the marketplace, if you would.
So just a quick note, he's talking about the Grayscale conversion. So Grayscale currently has a futures ETF, and they're trying to get it converted to a spot Bitcoin ETF. That's the conversion he's talking about. And there's a lot of tax maneuvering that needs to happen for that conversion to take place. And he's saying the SEC might not approve Grayscale. It's kind of going to be a winner-take-all situation. Like the biggest winner, all the funds will eventually flow into that because they'll have the biggest volume. And since Grayscale has kind of a head start, they're going to do a conversion, and if that conversion succeeds, they're going to have a big head start because it already has a lot of money in that fund. So it's possible. Some people are saying it's possible that they do not get approved because the SEC wants everybody to have a fair race, and if it's not a fair race, and if Grayscale does come out ahead because of the conversion, then that's not really good. So they could get denied. So this is the conversion they're talking about.
And you may see some sideways choppy movement in the price of Bitcoin. Last of all, you may see a denial, in which case you will likely see a drop down to 30K, and the market's going to reconsolidate, and people are going to be scratching their heads wondering what's going to happen. I don't think scenario 3 is likely. I think scenario 2 is very likely. I think what we may very well see is, let's say scenario 2 is the kind of option. Then you'll see likely once they're approved, there's a lag between approval and going effective, meaning they can actually go out and sell shares. That's anywhere from 30 to 60 days. You're seeing a lot of preparations being put in place today. So most probably closer to 30 than the 60 days. When that happens, so you'll have the approval, then you'll have some selling off of the price. I think, it's always this, buy the rumor, sell the news. Once you have the news, you'll see some people do some profit taking. Then people are going to be very concerned with looking at the number of what the uptake is. How are the capital flows going into these things? If you go back to 2021, when we had the futures ETFs come online, everybody was very watchful, and the uptake wasn't as exciting as expected. And especially now, people are very focused on Bitcoin, comparing it to the gold ETFs. And so if you don't have billions of dollars flowing into these, quite quickly, you may see some stagnation or potential sell-off in Bitcoin again, because it's kind of the bubble's been burst. So you have this buy the rumor, sell the news. With the approvals in January, you have another event when the inflows start happening. Then you have the halving. And then the expectation, if you follow historical cycles, would be that you'll have a run up towards the end of the year, at which point you would, in theory, surpass the last all-time high. I think a lot of analysts today are prognosticating or projecting that Bitcoin will exit 2024 somewhere in the 70 to 100,000 range, which would be, again, beating the last all-time high.
I also think it might be a sell the news event because there's already these exchange traded products in the market and in places outside of the US, like in Europe. These things already exist, and there wasn't like a feverish hype over it. So maybe we need to wait till our interest rate cut before real money starts flowing into these, or maybe it could just blow up right away. I'm not really sure, but we'll have to see how it plays out. Let me know in the comments below what you think is going to happen when this spot ETF gets approved, and let me know what you think about today's stock drop.